growth in dentistry to me means we are taking, us in this generation are taking that experience, those talking points, and really passing that down and leaving the ladder down for others to come along and also be part of this great industry.
This is Growth in Dentistry, a dental intelligence podcast where we ask the question, what does growth in dentistry look like to you? I'm Katie Polson, a dental hygienist and your host. Welcome to another episode of Growth in Dentistry. I'm Katie Polson, and it is a beautiful fall day here, at least in Salt Lake City. I'm so excited that fall is here. I'm one of those really cliche 40-year-old women that just really loves fall, but I'm just so glad that it's here, and I'm glad to be able to have another episode here. For those of you that are not listeners to the show, have never listened before, we're glad that you found us. This is the goal of this show is to give you 30 minutes of actionable advice on your way to and from work or whenever you choose to listen. Something that a key takeaway that you can implement today in your practice. So that being said, if you are a big Facebook person, I don't know, the dental community really is. They really love Facebook. Facebook, we have a Facebook dental intelligence community there. It's a really great place for you to get more information about not necessarily our product, but how to use data in general in your practice. There's some awesome information that you really can only get there in the Facebook community as opposed to anywhere else and wherever we put up all of our other content. And if you're not a current customer and want to be one, we are giving $50 to those people that complete a demo that are listeners of the show. So you just need to go to get.dentalintel.com/podcast. So that will be on our show notes. But without further ado, let's get past all the boring stuff and get to the good stuff. I'm so glad to have Lorie Streeter here, VP of AADOM. So glad to have you here. Thank you so much, Lorie. Thanks for joining. It was a blast. We'll get into how much fun AADOM was, but tell us a little bit about you. Yeah. And AADOM. Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay. So, how about very little about me, but whatever you want to know. Yeah. Pretty open book. So, I've been in dentistry for 32 years. And I started out as an office manager, which was a great place to start, and then ended up at AADOM, which is great. I, like many of you who are listening, did not have a community. I basically had to learn on my own, cut my teeth in, private practice for 12 years, and then went to work for Smile Brands for 5 years. And, I've just been in dentistry my whole life, and it has been the most rewarding thing ever. I have a husband and a son and a dog, and I live in Idaho. So that's a little bit about me. Awesome. And I love office managers, and I love dental intel for that matter. So there you go.
Well, we're so glad to have you. Honestly, I just a little bit of we'll do a AADOM recut. AADOM, when I say AADOM, I mean their annual meeting, which is separate from the actual association. Sometimes I think they get intermixed, but I went first time this last year. I'm sure you're still tired. Was this 3 weeks ago? Was it 3 weeks ago? I know.
What?
Right. I know. Honestly, I've been to a lot of dental meetings. I've been to ADA. I was part of the delegation of the American Dental Hygiene Association for my state, right? So I went to that and the Hygiene Association meetings, and this is the first time. It was unreal. It was like any other meeting I had ever been to, and I'm not just saying that because I'm recording and I have the VP here. Like I literally, it was, and I even told I got a chance to just speak for just a second to some of the attendees that came to the dental intelligence class. And just, I did not realize the impact that your association has on, it really does. It's incredible. So tell us a little bit about the history of AADOM. How did it get, what's your membership at? That kind of thing. What do you offer?
One of my favorite stories. So our president, Heather Colicchio, started AADOM, I think 18 or 19 years ago. She's a complete, brilliant entrepreneur and friend. And she started AADOM because she had a friend that was a dentist, and the dentist was complaining and saying, oh, there's no associations, no help for my office manager. So long story short, she went to a dental meeting on her own and started asking booth to booth if there was a dental association for office managers. At the time, she owned a chain of coffee bars, which she was kind of Starbucks before Starbucks was cool kind of thing. And she's really known as HR Java. So it's kind of funny because that's where she started. No dental background whatsoever. And as she started connecting people and seeing that there was a need, I think this big light bulb went off and people are like, no, there's no association, but if you find one, will you pass along my card? Will you pass along my info? So she began. And one of my favorite stories is, I mean, way before dental intel and any kind of intel for that matter, she bought like a list and started faxing office managers. And she'd say for every 10 back that she would get that would say, I'm going to sue you, I hate you, don't ever fax me again. Right. One person would fax back and say, oh my gosh, where have you been all my life? Like, what's that like? And so when I found AADOM, which stands for the American Association of Dental Office Management, since I had been an office manager, I was like, oh my gosh, I was on an island. Like I had no idea there were resources for office managers. So when I met Heather, it was 2006 and 7. I actually attended her second annual conference as an attendee for a vendor that I worked for. And she was wonderful and I fell in love with the association, and there was 1,200 members at that time. We are at 10,600 now. That's so crazy. There's been tremendous growth, and I get asked the question all the time, like, what has AADOM been able to do for office managers throughout the years? And I would say that if we've succeeded in, besides making this wonderful community where you can see that everyone is like friends and so supportive with each other, and they're just willing to do anything to help one another, which is so rare nowadays, that really, I think AADOM has managed to professionalize the role of the office manager. So take it from, especially like a company who's looking to market to the whole entire dental team. You know, there's so many times when we say, you better talk to the office manager because they're the ones that really drive the decision-making in the office, implementing, especially front office pieces. And they play an integral role in the whole practice, as well as the rest of the team. So I would say that's my AADOM in a nutshell, like how it kind of got started. And you know, where it is now is pretty amazing. And just to add to what you said about AADOM and the conference are separate, they are and they aren't. So the AADOM conference is our large event for the whole association all year long. And then the membership actually gets to utilize online resources and the community all throughout the year. So it's like we are AADOM and conference and so much more. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And just so for those of you that, I mean, cause I'm an ignorant hygienist who did not know anything about AADOM. I did not know that it existed, and I've been in dentistry for 25 years until I started working for Dental Intel. And then I told my office manager that in my practice, I'm like, did you know that there's this thing called AADOM? You should be a part of it. So Kathy, if you're listening,
that's awesome.
Check it out again if you haven't been. But also just so when I was going, when we were prepping to come to the meeting, I was thinking, we'll go and I'll get a chance to because my entire goal was just to talk to people that use Dental Intel and see if like what their likes were, what their dislikes, and just kind of talk to the office managers.
Sure.
And I was expecting to have all this time because at a dental hygiene conference, you know, they go for CE, but they don't really go for, I mean, like they're but they're not there. Like these office managers were there to learn. Yes. They were, I mean, I asked them like, hey, do you have time later? And they like pull out their schedule and they are like, oh, I'm here, there, this. And they have got their schedule, which is great. I was not prepared for how dedicated they were. And what the point was of coming to this conference was really to learn and and they were just taking copious notes back to their practice. And you guys were helping them learn how to do that and like advocate for what change they want to make. Like it was incredible. Like I'm still blown away.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, people often ask us, you know, what's the secret sauce of AADOM? And number one, I think we have a very hardworking back end team, and we've been doing this so long that I think I said it on, AADOM has a podcast as well. And I'm just going to repeat one thing that I said on that. I did the 100th episode podcast recently, I should say. And one of the things that I said is, AADOM is always visioning forward. We're always looking and listening. So people think it's kind of silly, but we do a very extensive survey at the end of every conference. And I can tell you there's no year that we go through and go, okay, these are the 20 things that were consistent takeaways. We're going to either adjust, keep doing, make change. We're always listening and trying to evolve to make a better experience the next year. And I can honestly say, after going to every conference but the first one, so I've been to every single one so far, knock on wood, very lucky. Every year trumps the year before. I mean, it's just amazing that we're able to do that. And you're right. I think part of that secret sauce is that the office managers really want to learn. And let me give you a little history on that, if you don't mind. So my best friend growing up in dentistry was a hygienist, and I lost her Lou Gehrig's disease. So I have a special place in my heart for all hygienists because she was so near and dear to me. And I can tell you that it was painful to me as an office manager, when they would go to, I grew up in California, and they would head off to the dental meeting, the local state show or anything like that. And everybody went because they needed CE, and there were no classes for me. There was no, reason for me to be there. Yeah. I just basically stayed behind and answered the phone, which, how silly is that? I mean, so it's wonderful in the industry that I am seeing across the board, all kinds of dental meetings have all kinds of management related classes. And especially from a dental intel perspective, that the information that you can gather based on your great software is information that needs to be explained and implemented based on that information and productivity marker. So I think for office managers overall, the reason they're so engaged is because they're so grateful, because many years ago, there was nothing for them. And now this is just for them. So I really do think, this is the first year we had 300 office managers on our waiting list. So that couldn't even come to the conference.
That's insane.
Yeah. So it's, very telling where we are in dentistry.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And just the appreciation that I felt from the people there, from the office managers there. I mean, you could really feel that they had found their tribe. And I mean, we've catered all of our education content and everything here at Dental Intel to office managers, because we understand that need for the office manager, because we can provide data and we can provide analytics and we can provide tools to make the job easier, but it doesn't get implemented unless we have buy-in from the people making the decisions. And for most practices, that is solely on the back of the office manager. So
that's right. Absolutely.
Really awesome. Yeah. So one thing that I wanted to also say, I mean, before, and for those of you that are listening that have never or want to be part of AADOM, and we'll give you an opportunity to, or if you want your office manager to be part of AADOM, we'll give you an opportunity at the end to figure out where to go. But one thing, and I'll just tell a little bit of a story before we move on to our next topic, so my dad was a dentist. His office manager was with him for 25 years before she retired. And I shared this story with that class because it really I teared up, because she is was a huge part of every single piece of that practice, and was like a second mom to me, because I grew up in the practice with it being my dad. Right. And you're right. Like the value that an office manager brings, I'm just so grateful again to be able to highlight what you guys are able to offer so that they can have some resources, because they're running a business and they don't have the ability. Most of them don't even have the education to do that. Yeah, really, really awesome.
I think the really also unique thing about AADOM is that we do partner with great companies like Dental Intel. And, I've been working with Steve Jensen for many years now. And I can say, because that's the side I sit on, I work with a lot of sponsors, and I do also get to, work with members and have interaction, but we have a big member services team. And if you said like, what is your guys' goal throughout the year to be able to do, is that I want to work with sponsors who understand the importance of the office manager so that we can work together to build education opportunities for them to thrive and connect. So it's wonderful. And a perfect example is you guys sharing some time about AADOM on your podcast today, because it's so important to get the message out that people are not alone. And you said something that was very interesting. You said, a lot of times, there's not a whole lot of education for office managers. Like there's no office manager school today, right?
Yes.
You can't just go and become an office manager. So like me, my dental assistant, who I love dearly, all those years we worked together, her name was Jean. She came up and brought me a big orange book on dental assisting, which I wasn't assisting. I was the office manager, but she's like, here, learn this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I mean, literally I had to like learn everything from square one. AADOM takes a little of the pain out of that. We do have, classes for beginner office managers all the way up to experienced. And the great thing is you can do all those things and then highlight by going to the conference. And I don't know if you were there during our fellowship ceremony, but you see how important it is for those ladies and gentlemen to, walk in cap and gown. I mean, I know several office managers who didn't graduate high school, and actually that was the first time they ever had a cap and gown on. So I think the industry, AADOM and specifically, has really opened to understanding that by empowering the office manager, you are giving them the tools to elevate and lift up every single person in the practice by their knowledge. Just like you said, and I say it all the time, office managers are kind of like moms, like the best moms and dads. We've got both now. So it's great. And I think that's a beautiful analogy that you used in reverence to your office manager, because I can tell you, for me, all I wanted to do was take care of everybody. I kind of have that people pleaser mentality, and I wanted to make sure the schedules were full, that the doctor was happy, that the insurance was built. I wanted to make sure everything was just so that I could keep the happy family running all the time.
That's a lot. That's a lot to put on one person too. Yeah.
It is
a lot. Yeah.
It is.
Well, so good.
They're heroes.
They really are. And I'm so grateful that there's an association for them now. It's really awesome. So not now, it has been for a while, but to highlight it.
Yes.
Again. So, well, we're going to switch gear just a little bit to scheduling, because the entire month of October, we're talking about scheduling, and you brought up scheduling. And I know with all of your years of experience, you've got some best practices. So what do you find that are some of the biggest areas of opportunity that you're seeing? Say you're talking to a new office manager in your practice, or in a practice that comes to scheduling.
So the funny thing is, in preparing for this interview, which I don't do very well, I tend to talk very off the cuff, but I actually did a tiny bit of research because I haven't worked in a dental practice in, 20 years, 20 plus years. So I pulled a couple of my friends.
Awesome.
And very good
some
friends.
Powerful friends in AADOM. Yep.
Absolutely. And some amazing office managers. So, I kind of asked the question about scheduling. And I think the main thing that came up was patient retention, ease of use, all the things that we talk about. So a couple of the great tips that I thought that I got from my friend Val, we talked a little bit about, just simple patient scheduling 101. So ease of use, like we were talking about how you used to have to call the office and say, hey, can I make an appointment? And, you're busy. I don't know about you, but like all day long, I'm like, I got to call my doctor. I got to call I forget, the next day goes by, 2 days goes by. So now online scheduling is such a big deal. The patient, it should be very easy for the patient to be sitting in their slippers, in their, easy chair, watching Netflix, and be able to go online and just schedule an appointment. Very, very important for them to be able to do that. And I know it sounds funny to give something so rudimentary, but honestly, there's a lot of offices that don't operate that way.
Yeah, because
still.
they're scared. It can be a scary thing
Yes.
to give your schedule up to an online scheduling software and let patients schedule themselves. It's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And the other thing that she mentioned to me that I thought was so important was, every good schedule is planned. And, I think having blocks for certain things, making sure that there are areas where if someone does break a tooth or has to have a root canal and they're in pain, that those things are identified. And then you kind of know more the flow of how the patients are going to come in, and your team, I think from her perspective, and this makes so much sense to me, everybody that touches the schedule has to understand the rules, because patients' times are valuable, and they don't want to have somebody call and say, oh, well, somebody in the office made a mistake and put you on this day or that schedule. So making sure everybody in the practice has scheduling rules down and understands where to put patients when they call in from an emergency basis.
Yeah.
So
that's really
super important.
I think so. I mean, I've been on that phone call when someone's called and I feel bad. And then you just shove them in somewhere. Well, it's not my problem. I'm in the front, so it's so much easier if you have a block, and then you can, okay, I know right where to put you. This is the point in which you can, and if it's full, then you give them the next one. Right. And then there's less you try to figure out just shoving them in somewhere, which is, I feel like that is the number one contention between front and back office. Don't you? Like when you were in it 20 years ago, like the schedule between why'd you put them there? You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest with you. I was super controlling with my schedule. I didn't want anybody touching anything.
Right.
So I was one of those office managers who was like, yeah, no, I'll take care of that. So, the only time it ever seemed to get out of control was when I was out of the office for something, I kept a real tight watch on it. Now, when you have a big practice, that's harder to do, right?
Yeah.
And, one of the things that her and I chatted about, which I thought was super, but very intuitive, is when you are scheduling people, keeping your team flexible enough that if someone, thinking of the patient first. So if you have someone scheduled for something, but that they're going to need a night guard for some reason, or they want bleaching trays, or there's something that comes up, is really trying to utilize your operatories so that you may have them blocked in for one schedule, but if they need something else, and while you're here, Mrs. Jones, can we go ahead and do the impressions for your night guard? I've got someone who's available to do that. So really taking advantage of add-ons and adding to the treatment. I mean, it does nothing but increase the bottom line for the practice.
Yeah.
It's convenient for the patient. And we all know what happens when we have a happy patient that leaves the practice, they refer.
Yeah.
So that's ultimately what we want.
Yeah. Same day dentistry. I think, and it takes a little bit of looking ahead and planning and seeing what people need, which is not easy to do, but it does take time. Doing a morning huddle can help with that, but for sure. Yeah. Really awesome. Great. Thanks, Val. Thank you, Val. And thanks, Lorie, for, I know I put you on the cuff there, but I was like, I'm sure somebody have some good best practices, because scheduling, especially right now, we're moving into the end of the year and people are going to start to just shove people wherever they can find them, because it's, insurance is ending. So that's really great advice.
The last thing she said was too, is that communication is critical. So communication with your team, setting expectations. I mean, all of it, again, sounds like a big, duh, we should be just doing that. But it never fails when someone picks up the phone and tries to be helpful and shoves somebody in, like you said, at the last minute. It makes the doctors nervous. It makes the team nervous. And so if everybody kind of knows, hey, whatever coloring system or, unit system that you're using, really making sure that everybody understands the rules of the schedule and that it's planned. I think that was her biggest piece of advice.
That's really great. Great advice. Thank you so much for that. And although they're simple, it always does not help to be reminded about things, because you might already have the system in place, but you think, well, we kind of lost our way a little bit. Like we need to get back on track on that before we get to the end of the year. So
For
really
sure.
great advice.
For sure.
Yeah. So we asked this last question to every single person that comes on the show. And for those of you that haven't listened, it's because everybody has a different answer to what this means to them. And at Dental Intelligence, we're really big on growth here. So what does growth in dentistry mean to you?
I can't wait to answer this. Okay. So selfishly, I'm going to start with AADOM. So growth in dentistry to me means that wonderful people like you and the whole entire dental community, number one, understands the role of the office manager, and that everyone knows that there's a resource like AADOM. So that's the selfish answer. The bigger answer in the big grand scheme of dentistry, since gosh, I've been doing this since I was 20, so which was like yesterday and a half. To me, it's that number one, access to care. I'm very passionate about access to care and making sure that everybody has the ability to have dental work if they need it. But growth in dentistry to me means that we, all of us that are working in dentistry, take the time. I don't know if you've ever met Teresa Duncan, who's a wonderful consultant and friend of mine. She gave a speech year before last at AADOM called Leave the Ladder Down. And one of the ways that you can leave the ladder down, you, me, and everyone, is that we need to be more vocal about what a great community dentistry is. We need to be at the high schools. We need to be talking at the career fairs about going into becoming hygienists and dental assistants. We have a shortage in dentistry right now of good available workers. And it's such an amazing field that growth in dentistry to me means we are taking, us in this generation are taking that experience, those talking points, and really passing that down and leaving the ladder down for others to come along and also be part of this great industry. Because let's face it, I mean, dentistry is part of everything. It's connected to the heart, it's connected to the smile, and it's connected to the head, all the way down to your toes. So everything in dentistry should grow, because the more we grow dentistry, the healthier we all become. So for me, kind of twofold, we got to support those office managers. We have to leave the ladder down and make sure that other people talk about dentistry and talk about what a viable role assistants, hygienists, doctors play in this, thing we call life. And then really from there, I think, sky's the limit. I mean, I'm happy for private practice growth. I'm happy for DSO growth. I'm happy for everything in between. I think it's not one size fits all. And that's the beautiful thing about dentistry. It's not like medicine where it's been compartmentalized. There really is the ability in dentistry to be and do whatever you want and be really great at it for your patients. So that would be my short answer.
So good. That is so good. I feel genuinely the exact same way. I mean, like, look at what the field of dentistry has done for both of us, right?
Absolutely.
I would love,
absolutely.
I would love and encourage anyone to join us. It's such a great field.
Absolutely.
So good.
Yeah.
Well, Lorie, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. If for those of you that want to find AADOM, where can they, or join AADOM, where can they do that?
Super easy. Couple different options. So dentalmanagers.com is our website. People can take a complimentary test drive of AADOM and just kind of get a sample of the resources and education. The annual conference is under our events tab. If you do nothing else, sign up for our wonderful annual conference. Like you said, to me, it's I'm prejudiced, but it's the best in dentistry. If you're, that's your window of opportunity.
Yeah, it really is. It's so good. And the prizes, people, the prizes, just go for the prizes.
Yeah, I mean, that just started like as an accident, and it has grown to be like one of
everybody's. They were given, I mean, like we were prepared to give away something good, and I showed up thinking it was good, and I thought an Apple Watch was good, but I'm like, Coach bags. I'm like, what the crap? This is awesome.
What the heck? I know, and it's so fun. I mean, I keep really quiet, and I sit back there, and I've actually heard people in the audience dig deeper, and I'm like. Oh my gosh, they're like, criticizing how I'm spinning the wheel to try to get their name out.
It gets heated, but if you, It's so fun. That was such a great time. Yeah. Awesome. So
It was
dentalmanagers.com, if anything, plan on going to the event
Yes.
next year. Next year it's in Florida, right?
Orlando, Florida.
Florida. Yep. Okay. All right. Well, I hope that they'll let me go next year, but if not, maybe I'll just come by myself.
Okay. Yay. Well, be sure and say hello. And
yes,
thank you to your listeners. And we really appreciate being invited on today.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to our marketing department for all their work on this podcast. I'm Katie Polson. Keep growing.